I want to start this video off with a question. With Eren Jaeger's declaration of war, wanting to obliterate all life outside of paradise, can you as a reader support that? Even though we've been with Eren for the longest of times, since the beginning of the story, we've seen the hatred that he's built up, the reception towards Eldians and how they're treated, do you still think what Eren wants to do is justifiable? And killing billions upon billion of innocent men, women and children that may not even be a part of this war, do you think you would be okay with that? Currently, at the moment, this is the option that we're building towards. It's a very outlandish option. Eren wanting to annihilate the rest of the earth so Eldians can live in peace is very fickle in design. As much as the emotional attention to it is justified, the actual action for it is not. There is a big difference between destroying Marley off the face of the earth compared to destroying the rest of the world. And this is where a lot of things within the story at the moment that we actually don't know about starts to shine ever so more. Without a doubt, there is a long history with Eldians and Marleyans and how much they've been at war with one another. There is an eternal hatred on both sides. Marleyans despise Eldians and Eldians now vice versa. Do you notice how that does not incorporate the rest of the world? We do not know about many other nations outside of Marley. We don't know how they feel towards the Eldian people. We know they're scared, and with all right they should be. Eldians have a power that is so tremendously insane, so tremendously terrifying, and at any moment that power could be used, like now, to threaten the entirety of the human life as we know it. But the difference between hatred between the rest of the world and Eldians and Marleyan Eldians is entirely different. It's situational. Marleyans and Eldians date very far back. Before Titans existed, they were at war with one another, which in total was a very normal thing. We've seen what the Eldians were like prior. We've seen a very gruesome glimpse of the true nature of Eldians and what Ymir Fritz specifically went through. They were ruthless. Going back to the Germanic tribe period and what that would have entailed to the Eldian people, and the royal side of it would have went to different nations and different tribes, obliterated them, took their people and enslaved them, turned those innocent people into whatever they needed to be. They would torture them, manipulate them, work them to death, turn them into fighters, whatever else unimaginable you can think of. In that time period, that would have been normal for Eldians, and Ymir Fritz was no one important within there. She was just another slave like everyone else, and the Marleyans would come in and attack them. They would be at war with them. They would fight them on the battlefield. It seemed like the Marleyans were definitely more advanced. They had a lot more things at their disposal. They were a lot more organized, but it didn't mean they were necessarily winning. There was definitely conflict trading back and forth. This all changed when Ymir got the power of Titans, and this powerhouse that completely imbalanced everything would come into play. Eldians would use this power, use Ymir specifically, to take out their enemies, because why wouldn't you? This is where the hatred comes from. This is where the scary nature of Titans and the fear towards it starts to build. Eldians and Marleyans would have been at conflict way before the Titans were even existed, but now there's something new to be scared of, and a new reason to be scared of Eldians. I think the oddest thing about Eldians from the past and even now at the moment is that for the first time in the Eldian history, the Eldian people are taking control. The normal civilians now have the power to do with what they want. Thousands of years ago, we've seen the royal corruption. We've seen how royalty treated these people, treated children, women, men, all equally in disastrous ways. But even in the modern time, we've seen how the royalty within Eldians treated the people, what they hid from them, how they manipulated them, erasing their memories. The royal side of the Eldian bloodline is shrouded in tragedy and darkness, and the people have always been the recipients of that. They have been the one to take all of the hatred, all of the pain and the suffering of what the royal people built. From many thousands of years ago to exactly now, but times have changed. Marley has changed. Eldians have somewhat stayed in place, but now the people are what are in charge. The people are overthrowing all sort of government, official, any sort of politics, whatever it may be. The Eldian people are taking charge. And this brings up a more difficult question for the rest of the world. As much as peace may not be a thing, as much as they tried, the rest of the world potentially don't share that same hatred for Eldians as Marley does. Marley, it's understandable. The rest of the world, it is not. They're scared. And of course they would want to work with Marley to obliterate Eldians off the face of the earth. A very minuscule amount of people that they could kill, and the rest of the world would be safe from Titans and this crazy ability. Other nations would obviously oblige by this. But I'll ask you this, if Marley wasn't there, if Marley was out of the picture completely, do you think the rest of the world would be as obligated to obliterate Eldians if they offered peace? That is a completely different situation that I think is very much viable. There is a very big difference between the hatred of Marleyans and Eldians and the rest of the world and how they feel towards Eldians. If Eldians were the one to propose peace to the rest of the world with Marley out of the picture, I feel like the rest of the world, as cautious as they may be, would oblige. Even if Eren showed good faith, or whoever showed good faith, allowing the Eldians to be free, they could work together. Eldians wouldn't have to create their own nation or place where they could reside in peace within the world. They could expand outwards and thrive with the rest of the world. The Titan shifting ability would live on, but could be used for good. Could you imagine how much this would expand humanity forward? How much this would grow in technological advancements, civil advancements, constructing some incredible structures just by using the Titan ability, not used for war, not used for hatred, but for prosperity, for life. It sounds so surreal, right? It almost sounds impossible, but it is possible. But how far do we have to go to get there? And depending on how far we have to go, is it still possible to get there? If Marley has to be obliterated, the rest of the world will definitely be scared. Would there be understanding on the rest of the world's behalf because of the internal hatred that both share? Is it justifiable for even Eldians to retaliate to such extent? Maybe so, maybe not. But this is when we lead into more of a moral confliction with Eren's current goal, and with him wanting to kill billions of people. He wants to eradicate human life outside of paradise. As much as this goal could actually happen, as much as this really could be the end of the story, I think we're going down a different path. I think destruction of value will be there, but I don't think it's going to be the entire human population. If anything, that would make Earth uninhabitable. Eren killing billions of people would only entail to killing his own. Eldians would not be able to thrive outside of paradise. They would not really be free. The rest of the world would be in shambles, and we don't really know what catastrophe of that size would cause in reality. You trample the world with all of this power. How does that change climate? How does that affect the world in total? Does Earth retaliate and send in some supernatural disasters? That would be very ironic if all this hatred was taken out on these innocent people across the globe, and paradise being the only race to exist. And yet one earthquake, one supernatural storm, a tsunami, a tidal wave, cyclone, tornado, it would only take one of those of a massive magnitude to obliterate paradise completely. And I feel like if you destroyed all life on Earth to such a degree, using such power, you will get some sort of response like that. Earth would definitely be uninhabitable. I don't think Eren's actions are justifiable. I do think the title of Armin being humanity's savior will definitely come into play. There is a reason why that title was there to begin with, and there's a reason why it hasn't been used. This is what Armin was made for, whether it be to emotionally connect to Eren, whether it be to bring him down to some sort of understanding or to maneuver his path to a different goal. That may both be Armin and Mikasa, specifically, connecting to Eren on such an emotional level where he stops the destruction completely. This in itself leads to what then? What is life after Eren Jaeger? After his Titan, after his abilities that he's using, what happens? I think a destruction of some kind has to take place. I think Marley has to be destroyed. They are kind of the gatekeeper for all of this. The internal hatred stays within Marley, and they will continue to manipulate their own Marleyan children and the Eldian children over there till the ends of time. They are continuing this cycle of hatred. They are continuing this internal struggle. With them out of the picture, peace and prosperity, as much as it may seem fickle, could be a possibility. But if that's a possibility, it all relies on Armin and Mikasa then, and whoever else is going to stop Eren. Eren is playing a very massive villain, and it should be very difficult for readers to justify Eren's actions because realistically they are not. I remember when we did not want Zeke's plan to come into play. We didn't want that to be a reality. Zeke wanting to euthanize the Eldian race and not allow them to continue to live and not have children, disastrous. We don't want that. But looking back, that is a morally better option than what Eren is doing now. They're both equally horrid and bad and tragic and saddening, but the euthanization of the Eldian race comes somewhat peacefully. They're not abruptly killed. They get to live the rest of their life, and within under 100 years the Eldians would cease to exist, and so would the power of Titans. On the other hand, you have the death of the human race entirely. You have innocent men, women, and children that are not part of this war whatsoever being killed. So if we aren't taking any of these options, there is a third option, and I think that will be in the form of reconnecting with Eren on some sort of emotional level, whether that be with Armin and Mikasa, potentially other people going up against Eren to stop him. If the people of the world see Eren for what he is now, if he is playing that villain, if he is playing that monster, if his own people take him out, there has to be some sort of trust value from that. There has to be a response from that. The rest of the world would see that this is Eren's ideology, but the Eldians don't realistically support it. And as much as Eren wants to do all of these things, his demise, his death, his destruction from potentially his own people could connect the world entirely. But I think the piece of Marley has to disappear. I don't think Eldians can continue to exist with Marleyans still in play, because these are the people that are still continuing the cycle. And on top of that, I don't think Eren can live by the end of the story. He has used a tremendous amount of power. He has showcased a very evil side of himself, and him living allows the rest of the world to latch onto him and to be scared of him and to oppose him. But if he's out of the picture, maybe, just maybe, the rest of the world would be happy, or at least open to talk about some sort of connection, some sort of rekindling. The biggest threat is no longer a thing taken out by his own people. Life can be rebuilt, paradise can be demolished, and Eldians can be set free from their cages. They could spread across the globe and potentially even send the Titans with them. But I do think the Titan ability will be gone completely. I think with Eren and his potential quote-unquote demise, I do not see him living by the end of the story, and I do not see him annihilating human life as we know it. I don't think the Titans will continue to exist. I think they will disappear with Eren. He is playing that martyr role right now, that central hatred that everyone can come to hate, and with him gone, a global enemy, so will potentially the Titan shifting abilities. And hopefully, with Marley out of the picture, this gives an opportunity, a chance for Eldians to thrive. We don't know what the outside world could be like. The rest of the world could band up together and annihilate Eldians when they're weak and vulnerable because they don't have any Titan shifting abilities no more. But I think such a global threat like Eren and his own people taking him out shows a really big connection, is a really big showcase of wanting to be alive, wanting to thrive, and working together to take out such a global threat. Even with all of this at this point, only time will tell. The next couple of chapters are going to be absolutely phenomenal, that's for sure. So with that being said, that is basically it. Let me know how you feel about Eren Jaeger's goal. Are you in support of it, or do you think something else is going to happen? Do you think Armin's going to live up to that role of humanity's savior? Because there's got to be something else here, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I'm actually going to end the video off here. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.